Hello once more. So this is the second part of the BowlingGame Kata ported to C# and Visual Studio 2019. And if you haven't seen the first part, then you're not going to really get what's going on. So use your internet searching skills to find part one. Hopefully it's right next to part two somewhere. And then give that a watch, and then that will get you up to the starting point here. I'm going to go through the second commit. The sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed that at the end of the first one, I didn't have a Git repository. I've got one now, so I can actually commit stuff. But the way I've structured this in my Github, I'm going to stop calling it that, it's crap. In my GitHub is around the commits, and the way the original was structured was around the test that you write. So I'm kind of trying to make the point that whenever you get to a good, clean point where there's tests all passing and nicely refactored code, when you've kind of got across a hurdle like that, that's a great time for a commit. So I've done it by commits. When we're talking about the original, I'm also going to go off on a tangent in this one and actually talk about the original and where it comes from, and Uncle Bob, or Robert C. Martin, as he's more formally known, and the whole kind of idea of where this kata came from, just to give some credit where it's due. So yeah, so anyway, let's carry on. So we're starting from the point where we have one test, and it's test kata game. And what you should always do when you're starting any bit of coding is run all the tests and make sure they all pass, because if you were to write some code and then they all broke, you wouldn't really know whether it was you that had broke them or not. So now I know they're all green. Any red from now on is my fault. Okay, so time to carry on. So we start by adding a new test. Oh, look at that. I'm going to explain in a later video what I just did there. But this one is going to be called test all ones. And I need a new game again. Sharp-eyed amongst you will do this, a bit of this will actually realise I probably shouldn't be doing a new game. I should reuse the old one somehow, but we'll come back and refactor it later, because you do red, green, refactor, remember? Refactoring happens at the end when your tests are passing. So this is called test all ones, this test. So have a guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to roll lots of ones. 20 ones, in fact, which would be quite a good score for me in bowling. In the last video, I made a mistake when I was explaining this bit. I said you do Control S to surround with. That's wrong. You do Control K, Control S. Control S will just save stuff. And I want to do a 4, don't I? There we go. And I want 20 again. There we go. And I should have, in my assert, 20. And game.score should be 20. There we go. Control R and A, test my new test. Have a guess what's going to happen. Bang. Well, the reason for that is, and again, I'll just sort of show it. Expected 20, but was 0. Well, the reason it's 0 is, if you remember where we left this at the end of the first one, roll doesn't do anything, and score is all 0. And that passed for the first test because I was just testing whether a gutter game gave me 0. Now something's actually happening. Some ones are being rolled. So I need to actually do something with the score. So the thing I'm going to do with the score is just this. Oops. That equals pins. So basically, add 1 to the score for every pin that comes into roll. Look, the test pass. Hooray. However, what I could do at this point is refactor. And what I am going to do is refactor, because I've gone from red into green and then I refactor. But before I do that, I mentioned that I was going to try and give a bit of credit where it's due. So here's where the credit's due. We'll come back to that page in a minute. So this is the original BowlingGame Kata, which was written in Java, I think quite a while ago, probably, well, getting on for 20 years, if not more ago. And it was written by Uncle Bob Martin. And this page has been up for as long as I can remember, but it's a web page, so you can't assume it's always going to be there. But the good news is that the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, has actually archived all of this as well. So even if it disappears from here, you'll be able to get to a copy of the original there. So the idea behind it is, as I've said over and over again, it's to teach red-green refactor coding, but not just teach it, get you into the habit of doing it, which is what the word kata means. Go back to the first video if you missed all of this bit. The reason that Uncle Bob put it there was because he's one of the actual original signatories of the Agile Manifesto. Better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. And, this is the key word in all of this. I'm sure everyone's heard that word used ad nauseum. What I tend to find is that quite often the word agile is used as a euphemism for we're not going to do any planning at all. We're just going to make stuff up as we go along, and it's going to be all random and chaotic. That is not agile. So you'll find people going, agile doesn't work, and agile is terrible, and agile, we tried agile and you didn't try agile. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that. But there he is, Robert C. Martin. So he's one of the people that came up with this. Now, the thing about agile is you have these 12 principles of agile software. So they could do with some principles for better website backgrounds, really, couldn't they? But anyway, regardless of that, it's not a design manifesto, it's a software development manifesto. There are 12 principles, and the coding kata and test first, test driven development kind of fits in with a lot of these principles. So early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So the early and continuous part is it's going to be covered in tests from the word go. You can't write code till you've written a test for it. So that really helps with the whole continuous delivery part. Changing requirements again, well, the refactoring part of red-green refactor, if you've got good test coverage and a good design, then when late changes come in, you've got a much better chance of actually implementing them and knowing you haven't broken any of the stuff that you've already done. Working software, this is the other thing. So working software is mentioned a few places. So it's working because you tested it before you wrote it. So the fact that it works is kind of fundamental to the process you're using to actually produce it. And then working software gets mentioned again down here. Primary measure of progress. Continuous attention to technical excellence. So, I could go on. It's fundamental, and it's a fundamental part of Agile is to actually cover everything in as much tests as possible. The reason I was moaning before about people saying, oh, we tried Agile and, you didn't try Agile. The thing about Agile, the most important thing, the thing that a lot of people get wrong is that there are 12 things here. You have to do all 12 of them. You can't just pick and choose the ones that you like the look of and then say, so we're going to do, cover high test coverage, but we're not going to ever talk to customers and we'll kind of make up what the requirements are. That's not Agile. We're not going to try and put any effort into analyzing the actual value of what we're trying to deliver. If you don't do any of that, then your Agile isn't going to work. You have to do all 12. And an old boss of mine used to call this the 12 poisonous snakes, like the Celtic design for brooches and talks and things like that, where you've got snakes all in a ring with their tails in each other's mouths. If you take one of the snakes out, you've got 11 angry snakes chasing after you, wanting to kill you. So that's Agile in a nutshell. The other thing that Bob Martin is really famous for as well is he wrote this series of books, the Robert C. Martin series, and this is the kind of killer one. To quote Stuart Lee, if you only ever read one book, then I can recommend keeping your mouth shut. But actually, I can recommend reading this book. This is fundamental where I work now. All the new developers coming in get one of these dropped on their heads. He's written a whole load more as well. I've read a couple of them. This is the main one. So it's a bit pricey, but worth it really if you're serious about doing this job for a career. But the one thing it really teaches you more than anything else is that development is actually a team sport. I know a lot of developers would like to just go off on their own and do it their way, but if you're going to do this at all professionally, then you have to do it with colleagues and you have to help them, and this book will teach you how to do that. So okay, enough of that. Let's get back to the fun stuff. So I've left it passing but with some mess, so we're going to refactor the mess. So we're going to start off by refactoring. By actually adding some variables which we're not going to necessarily keep for very long, but they'll come in handy in a bit. And the reason for these is we've got some kind of magic numbers floating around. It's not that kind of obvious, like this 20, for example. We don't really know what that signifies. So as I say, development's a team sport. So this is about showing your intent in the code and making it clear what all these things mean. So let's do n equals 20. N is a terrible name as well, but I think we'll do something about that later. So that becomes N, and that becomes pins. We'll come back to those in a sec. Now, what we also said we would do is we've got 2 games being initialized. We can actually get away with just creating 1. So that's what your setup method's for at the top. So before we use that, we're going to have to do oh, hang on. Encapsulate it properly. There we go. Create that there. Then what we can do is we need to actually rename this all the way through, but rather than kind of renaming it everywhere, what you can just do is make that one underscore game. So we now have 2 underscore game objects on this test fixture, but with different scope. So what I can do there is just rename game to underscore game and then delete that one, and now it's picking up the one that's got global scope instead, and it's a bit quicker than going through and I can do the same thing there. Oops, let's try again. That's better. Just to get rid of those. There we go. Let's just check that my refactoring hasn't broken anything. I made a bit of a pig's ear of it, so it might have done. Oh, there we go. So now our game has fixture-wide scope. What next? So I'm also repeating this loop all over the place as well. So what I can do with that is, and this is where these come in handy, I can extract that into a private method and use it in 2 places, and then it reduces the amount of code we've got going on. So you select it, and then it's, as ever with these things, control and full stop, extract method, and I'm going to call it roll many because I'm rolling many pins. And I do that, and that's created me a nice roll many method down there, which I'm actually going to tidy up by shunt. Come on, there we go. Shunting down to the bottom. There we are. And then you can now see that has N and pins as its input parameters because I'd called those n and pins. So actually what I can now do is go back to that. There we are. And now I can do yeah. So that's all a bit tidier. Let's just tidy up that space there as well. How are we getting on? There we go. Okay, so that's my test all ones test, and that's the second one of these done. So at the end of the last one, I hadn't set up a Git repository. Sharp-eyed amongst you will notice I've got little red ticks on there now because I have changed it, because I have set up a Git repository. So I'm now going to commit these. So I'm going to do adds test all ones. I got into this habit of starting commit messages with a verb like add or create or delete or to explain the change that commit's actually made. The idea is to keep these small. Some people just put commit or whatever just to get over the message adding stage. You're going to regret doing that at some point, sooner rather than later, when you have to go back through all the commits to find out where you introduced the bug, and they've all got meaningless names. So that's enough, though, I think, to help me remember what stage I've got to. So I think I just do Control and Enter. Let's do that. There we go. So that's that commit walked through. So we move on to the third one next. The third one's where all the magic and fun and natural scary bits start to happen when you realise that bowling's a bit more of a complicated game than you thought. So hold on for that one. It'll be along in a minute. Okay. Righto. Thank you.